He thought he had prepared for everything: the paperwork, the budget, the move. Retirement is supposed to feel like freedom, and for 58-year-old David, that freedom looked a lot like a quiet life in the Philippines. Warm air, kind people, and a condo overlooking the sea. For years he had been lonely. His kids lived their own lives. His marriage had ended without much drama, just distance. And the silence inside his house began to feel heavier every year. So when he first visited Cebu, the noise of life here felt comforting. He noticed the simple things first: neighbors talking in the street, vendors laughing, kids playing outside until dark. Back home everything felt closed off. Here, he felt seen, not invisible, and that mattered more than he expected. On the third week of his visit, a friend introduced him to a real estate agent. Nothing serious at first, just a tour of some buildings. But the moment he stepped onto one of those balconies and saw the water stretching out forever, he felt something click inside. The agent explained the rules carefully. Foreigners cannot own land, but condos are different. You can own the unit itself, and this building will be one of the best in the city. Prices are still low. If you wait, you might miss your chance. That sentence echoed inside him. Do not miss your chance. How many chances had he already missed in life? He went back to his hotel that night and stared at the ceiling. Maybe this was the moment he finally chose himself. So he signed, not recklessly, not carelessly. He read the contract, he checked forums online. He watched videos from people already living here, and everything seemed to say the same thing. Condos are the safest way for foreigners to own property. There was just one detail he convinced himself was small. The condo was still under construction, pre-selling. 2 years until move-in, maybe less. He returned to the States, sold his house, and moved into a small rental so he could make payments more easily. Every month he sent money overseas. Every month he told himself it would all be worth it. 2 years later, the building was still not finished. Construction noise continued. Updates slowed down. Completion dates changed quietly. No one ever said the word problem. They said progress. Year 3 arrived. Finally, he got the message. Unit turnover, coming soon. He booked his flight and said goodbye to the life he used to have. When he walked into his new condo for the first time, he smiled. Small, yes, but bright, and the view was everything he had imagined. He furnished it slowly, piece by piece, with care. The first bill arrived a month later, then another. Association dues, maintenance, security, generator, fund, management fees. Individually they did not look huge. Together they whispered a warning he did not quite hear yet. He joined the condo owner group chat. At first it felt like community, then he noticed the pattern. Leaks, broken elevators, parking complaints, noise issues, power interruptions, and arguments about who should pay for what. But he tried to stay positive. He really did, because he loved the Philippines. He loved waking up to warmth instead of cold. He loved simple food. He loved the smiles. He planned to travel sometimes, so he decided he would rent out the condo when he was away. Several agents promised steady income. Occupancy rates always sound high during a sales pitch. The reality was different. More condos had been built nearby, hundreds of nearly identical units, all competing for the same renters, and the building changed the rental policy. Short-term stays suddenly restricted. So the rent plan disappeared overnight, and now the condo was only an expense. One he felt responsible to carry, even when it strained him. The walls were thinner than he expected. Late-night karaoke, dogs barking on balconies, people slamming doors, motorcycle engines echoing up the concrete tower. Silence became rare. But what truly shook him came during the next rainy season. A slow leak began creeping through his bedroom wall. Not dramatic, just quiet, persistent, like regret. He reported it immediately. Management inspected. They wrote notes. Then weeks passed, then months. Still the water returned every storm. Mold began to appear. A faint smell at first, then stronger. It crept into clothes, into furniture, into his breathing. He went back and forth between management and the developer. Everyone agreed it was a problem. No one wanted to claim responsibility. Then came the letter, special building assessment. Unexpected repair costs divided among all unit owners. He stared at the amount in disbelief. He had never planned for this. That was when he realized something painful. He had not just bought a home. He had bought into a system, and that system could ask him for money whenever it needed. He tried to sell, but the market was crowded. Newer buildings, more attractive offers, buyers bargaining hard. Some people walked away when they heard the word assessment. He did not lose all his money, but he lost something harder to measure, the feeling of safety, the belief that he had made a wise choice. Yet through all of it, his love for the Philippines never faded. He still loved the people, the culture, The daily conversations, the laughter in the streets. It was never the country that failed him, it was his expectations. Condos are legal for foreigners, but legality is not the same thing as security. There are questions many people forget to ask. How fast do fees rise? How responsive is building management? What happens when rules change? How many similar units are competing for renters? What happens in a recession? How easy is resale really? Some foreigners thrive in condos. They love structure, security, convenience, location, and when they choose wisely, it works beautifully. But others discover they feel boxed in, controlled by association rules, financially stretched by fees, and responsible for problems they never caused. In time, David accepted the truth. His condo was not a disaster. It was simply not the dream he imagined. He had traded one set of problems for another. Today he still lives in the Philippines, but he rents a small place now. Quiet, simple, flexible. When something breaks, he calls the landlord, and the problem is not his anymore. Sometimes he walks past that shining condo tower and looks up at the balconies. He wonders how many of those units hold people who feel the same way he did, hopeful at first, then quietly overwhelmed. He does not tell this story to scare anyone. He tells it so others do not repeat the same mistakes. He wishes someone had told him to rent first, to live in the building, to feel the noise, to watch the fees, to see how management responds when things break, before sending papers that tied his future to concrete and steel. Because once you buy in, leaving is not always simple. Buying is quick, selling can be slow, sometimes painfully slow. He told me this himself in an email. There was no anger in his words, just honesty, and a quiet sadness that comes from learning too late. So if you are dreaming of condominium, life in the Philippines, pause for a moment. Ask the questions people avoid. Look past the pool and the lobby lighting. Look at the management reports. Look at the rules. Look at the long term. Because paradise is not a building, it is peace of mind. And that peace only exists when you understand exactly what you are stepping into. Your dream can still happen, just do not rush it. Do not let marketing pressure you. Do not invest every ounce of your security into one decision. Some lessons cost money, some cost time, some cost both. But if sharing his story saves even one person from regret, then at least his experience means something. Life in the Philippines can be beautiful, real, deep, fulfilling. But every dream comes with fine print, and it is better to read it now than to live inside it later. There is something important many foreigners do not fully understand until later. In the Philippines, foreigners cannot legally own land in their own name. Condos are the exception. You can own a condo unit as long as most of the building is still owned by Filipinos. So for many expats, a condo feels like the safest legal path to ownership. That law protects local land ownership, but it also shapes every decision you make here. If you want a house on land, the land must usually be in the name of a Filipino citizen. Often that means a spouse or partner, and that creates a different kind of risk, because legally the land does not belong to you. Some people are completely comfortable with that. They trust their partner deeply. They see it as shared life, shared responsibility, shared future, and many live happily that way for decades. But others discover problems later, when relationships change or misunderstandings appear. So the choice becomes complicated. A condo gives you ownership, but also rules, fees, and shared building risks. A house and lot may feel more private and peaceful, but the land may never legally be yours. There is no perfect option, only what fits your situation, your partner, and your level of trust and risk. The real question is not what other people do. It is what you can live with, what lets you sleep at night, what allows you to enjoy the life you came here to build. Because the smartest decision is not always the cheapest or most exciting. It is the one that protects your peace of mind. If you ever choose to own anything here, get advice from professionals you trust. Ask questions. Understand the laws. Take your time, because the dream of living in the Philippines is real, but it should never depend on paperwork you do not fully understand. If this story helped you, please like and subscribe. It truly supports the channel and allows more people to hear the real side of life abroad. Stay aware, stay prepared, and I will see you in the next video.